Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, September 10th, 2023, and we're about 18 hours out from the finish line of Ironman 70.3 Atlantic City. I wanted to make this video for 3 to 4 reasons. One, maybe you're considering or already signed up for Tri-AC next year. Hopefully this will give you some insight on the course, just the overall logistics and plan and setup down there and what's going on down there. It's awesome. We'll skip to the good part. It's really great. 2, maybe you're doing your first 70.3 or you're thinking about doing your first half Ironman 70.3. Hopefully you'll get some information, some valuable insight from this. 3, not that long ago, you're talking 6, 7, 8 years ago, I could not swim 50 yards. Wanted to, couldn't do it. And went to YouTube and went to the internet, and I took in every bit of triathlon information I could get. It was absolutely an obsession. Crossed a line between hobby and obsession real quick. So I'm hoping that this video, I can pay back some of that debt that I took from the community. That community, we all love talking about this stuff and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos. We can be a bit obsessive with this stuff. So I love being part of that conversation, involving myself in that conversation, starting those conversations, just getting people to talk about this stuff. I really love it. So those are the reasons that I decided to make this video. Also, it was my first 70.3, so this is kind of the end of a very long journey. So hopefully I can use this kind of to help document the experience and just my thoughts on it before I forget about it. So what we'll do, we'll break this down in a couple of different areas. We'll talk about training leading up to it, and then we'll break down swim, bike, run course. So that'll be the format for how we're going to talk about this video. Okay, so let's just jump right in. I decided to use Matt Fitzgerald's 80-20 triathlon book for my training cycle. So I think it was 18 weeks. I'm a huge fan of Matt's as an author, as an athlete. I've read, countless books that he's written. I'm a huge fan. I'm also a huge proponent for 80-20 training in general, which is just the idea of spending 80% of your total training time in a low heart rate state. So you're building up your aerobic base, and then before you put all the fast stuff on top of it. If you've trained with me, or you know me, or you've just bumped into me randomly at a grocery store, you've probably heard me offer my unsolicited thoughts on low heart rate training. I'm a huge fan. I've seen humongous improvements over years. It's not quick, takes a while, but it's definitely enabled me to run much faster at the same or a lower heart rate. So I decided to use this triathlon plan. After about 2 months of seeing continuous gains in fitness, in strength and speed, my body said, "I don't think so, bud. You're plateaued," and it wasn't responding. I can be a bit hard-headed, a bit thick-headed with training, and despite any external stressors or factors, I will just plow through training. I don't recommend that. I also, right around that same time, got my Whoop strap, my Whoop band here, which was fantastic for helping me just gauge my overall stress. I don't mean stress like, oh my God, I forgot to take the trash out. I just mean total stress is in like, you're stressed from your exercise, right? You're stressed from just being an adult and having a career and a family and kids to cart all over the place, and homework and practices and grocery shopping and meal prep, just all the regular stuff that most age group triathletes have to deal with. So the Whoop was it has been a very phenomenal tool to help me kind of gauge, okay, you wake up in the morning, how is your body feeling, right? Maybe you have a really hard workout scheduled, but your HRV, took a dive overnight because you're not feeling well, you're tired. So then you go, okay, well, maybe I should pull that training back a little bit and just modify it. I wish I would have thought about this a long time ago, but so right around then when I got the Whoop Band, I transitioned over to Don and Melanie Fink's book, which is called Be Iron Fit, which I know tons of people have used that with great success. So the training is a little bit different on that. So I revised my plan and I used that to get to the starting line, and it worked perfectly. So a combination of those two books with my Whoop strap, the Whoop Band, and just being generally smarter about how I approach training and my body and my recovery. Recovery was huge. It was a big help. The other thing that I did in this training, which I normally don't do, is because I haven't done a race this long before. This was my A race, or the big one that I was training for. In that 16-week training cycle, I raced 3 sprint triathlons: Hamilton, New Jersey, Autumn Lakes, and Medford. And all 3 of those races, well, the first one was just for fun. It was on Father's Day. Did it with the kids. An absolute blast. Except for, spending the entire day yelling at my kids, stay to the right, stay to the right, stay to the right, stay to the right. Aside from that, it was fantastic. But the other 2, Autumn Lakes and Medford, I was racing by myself, and they were used to train for a race. So packing up all your stuff, waking up early, nutrition on the morning of, setting up transition, getting a warm-up swim in, getting in the water with, a ton of other people, getting hit in the face, trying to find where to go around people, sighting. We'll get to that later. I wanted that practice because you can train all day. You can run by yourself, bike by yourself, swim by yourself, fine, even in open water. But until you get in the middle of a pack of people and start to recognize your reaction to that, engage your response to that, until you have done that, you really are not ready for race day. I'll be very frank about that. You are not ready to go race a big race, the one that you've trained for, your A race, until you've kind of practiced it. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and do sprint tries. I think it's a great idea if you have a big race coming up. But I highly recommend it. You can be the most, and we talked about this. I've talked about this now in the last 2 races that I've done. So Atlantic City yesterday, and at Medford and Autumn Lakes, actually 3. When you can stand in that swim chute for the start of the race and have all the confidence in the world. You've done the distance, you can swim, you can do all this stuff. You stand in that swim chute, and all of a sudden you're like, do I know how to swim? Okay. And it happens all the time. I talked to some guy in the swim chute, and I was like, do you ever feel like this? And he goes, every race. Every race, it goes out the window. Your heart rate starts to go up, your breathing goes up. So you have to be able to sit there and say, okay, what are my techniques? What tools do I have to calm myself down? Slow down your breathing. Try and get that heart rate to calm down. Maybe you have to slow down your swim stroke, stretch it out, go a little further. That takes practice. But it also changed my training because I was not going to train the next day. I had to have a rest day next day. Maybe I was still tired the next day. So that was part of the training cycle. Overall, I thought that the combination of those 2 books, the Whoop, how I adjusted the training races, got me to the starting line yesterday very confident. I'm the fittest I've ever been going into a race. I didn't feel fatigued. I had about an 8-day taper going into yesterday where I really pulled back more than I thought I should. I don't really taper for sprints, but for this I had to, and I pulled back a lot. And on that last day, my HRV was really high, heart rate variability, which means I was recovering properly. My body was responding properly. I was completely primed on race day. So I felt really good about that. So that's the training up to this. We won't get into the real nerdy stuff about the individual, things or activities. I think the peak week was 14 hours. I think I averaged between 8 and 12 hours a week for training. I'll pop up some stats or a graphic here. Probably should have spent more time on the bike, but I'm not sure it really would have mattered. We'll find out why in a second. So let's park that, and we'll go to the swim start. So, swim. You are swimming a 1.2 mile swim in the bay in Atlantic City behind Bader Field. Some of you may be going, "You're swimming in the bay in Atlantic City?" Yeah, that was my thought too. I heard all kinds of horror stories about this swim, and they all got in my head. I heard that in 2019 you had to walk half of the swim because the muck was like quicksand and it came up to your knees, and the water only came up to like mid-thigh or your hip. So if you tried to walk, you started to literally sink into this, quicksand mud. But then if you tried to swim, your hands were hitting the bottom. It was just, I heard it was a mess. So you can let me know if that was true. I heard that people have stepped on fishing hooks. I've heard that there was a guy next to us in camp yesterday who said that his wife cut the bottom of her foot on broken glass, had an infection after. So it all sounded bad. I've heard about the infamous treadmill buoy. So imagine you swim 0.6 of a mile out. You're a little tired already, probably, maybe. And you get to this turn buoy, and the currents are bouncing you all over the place, and you're swimming and you're not going anywhere. You feel like you're on a treadmill, just going and going and going. So I heard all about that as well. Lots of stuff to be anxious and worry about. The last part about the swim was that last week we had a heat wave, a good heat wave. I mean, like high 90s all week, brutal temperatures. So I started to think, man, is this swim going to be wetsuit legal? For those of you maybe unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, once the water gets to a certain temperature, I want to say it's 82, 81.8 seems to ring a bell. I'll pop up the exact number here. Once it's over that temperature, you are not allowed to swim in a wetsuit, which makes sense, right? If the water's that warm and you're exerting yourself and you're exercising and you're wrapped in this tight neoprene, heat-containing suit, you could overheat and that's dangerous. If it's between 78-ish and 81-ish, it's called wetsuit optional. So you can wear it, but two things. One, you have to wait for all the other swimmers to enter the water, and then you go last. They put you in a pack with all the wetsuiters at the very back, which could pose a problem, because if people aren't swimming in a wetsuit and don't have practice with it, sometimes they could be slower. If you're in that wetsuit, you get a little extra buoyancy, you could be a little faster. So you could potentially be swimming in a wetsuit and all of a sudden hit a wall of swimmers that are swimming slower than you are. And if the course is narrow, you may have a tough time getting around them. Even yesterday for me, there were 3 or 4 times where I would, reach and go to take my catch and grab a foot, grab an ankle, and I would, pop up and look, and there would be 7 or 8 swimmers in front of me all swimming at the same pace. And I couldn't go around them. So I had to just kind of wait a second, 2 seconds, find an opening, and boom, try to take off and kind of go around them. There were a lot of times yesterday I took wide turns to get around people. So that's one of the issues with wetsuits and that wetsuit optional thing. The other thing is you're not eligible for awards. So if you think you're going to place or have a chance to get in the podium or win an award, if it's wetsuit optional, you're in a wetsuit, no soup for you. No awards. So that's about wetsuit optional. So what did I do? I went to the lake last week. I left my wetsuit home, and I did 1.5 miles in the lake just in my zoot, just in my tri-suit. And it's just a confidence boost. It's just to say, hey, you can do this distance without a wetsuit. I knew that I could, but it's doing it close to the race is a really nice confidence boost. So I did that. So what happens? We wake up the morning of yesterday. It's wetsuit optional. So then I'm staring at my wetsuit on the bed, staring at my zoot, staring at my wetsuit, staring at the zoot, back and forth. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I went in the transition, 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, all right, who's wearing wetsuits? And I did not see a whole lot of wetsuits. And I was leaning towards not wearing it, just because I tend to run hot anyway. So I didn't want to overheat. If you overheat in the water, you have a long day ahead of you. And you may not be able to get that core temperature back down. It's hard to get your core temperature back down when you get out of the water and jump on the bike and immediately start working. It's hard. So I was willing to give up that speed, that buoyancy, if I knew I was going to maybe have a more comfortable later part of my race. So I decided not to. The nail in the coffin was getting a text message from my coach, and she said, unprompted, this is not, and yeah, sorry, Coach, I'm going to call you out here a little bit because I loved it. She sent me a text message and she said, "You'll get buoyancy from the salt water." I didn't ask. She just said, "You'll get buoyancy from the salt water." I said, all right. So I decided to do the swim without a wetsuit. 100% the right decision to not wear a wetsuit in that swim. I have to say, the swim was my favorite open water swim of my entire life in a race. Absolutely my favorite swim I've ever done, ever. The water temperature was perfect. It's a shame because you can't get in first and do a warm-up. It's an active waterway. You can't really get in prior. So you didn't even know how hot or cold. You knew it was warm. The water temperature was 82. So you knew that it was going to be warm. You didn't know how. So you're lining up, and next thing you know, boom, you dive in. That's the first time you're feeling that water temperature, which is another reason you have to have these tools and techniques to calm yourself down, because sometimes you just have to jump in and that's it. I had a big smile on my face in the chute. I was calm. All those pre-race nerves and anxiety that I had ample amounts of going into the week. I mean, I was nervous. 100% I was nervous. For some reason, getting into that corral with all the other people, having the confidence of that swim, it all just went away. All the nerves just went away. And I dove in, and just from that, even from that first pull, I felt strong. I felt happy. I kept telling myself in the race, I was like, you are in an Ironman, half Ironman swim right now. Like, smile, be happy. You worked so hard for this. Like, just enjoy yourself. And I remember, I was just slowing my stroke down. I was sighting a lot more. So for those of you that are going to do this race or do try AC, I definitely encourage you to sight, because you don't want to miss one of the markers and have to come back. Maybe I happened to do that in Autumn Lake. Maybe I'll pop up the map to show you where I missed a marker and had to come all the way back and swim back around it the right way. The swim was not, I don't feel, for me, that where I was, I don't feel like the swim was very crowded. There were a handful of times where it did get crowded, but overall, I didn't feel like the whole swim was super packed. The water temperature was great if you're just wearing the tri-suit. There were definitely people that seated themselves in the wrong spot, which I was warned about. So when you get there, there's signs up and there's numbers, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And you put yourself in the category of how long you think it's going to take to complete the swim. I think I lined up in the 35 to 40 minute group. I had hoped to do it in sub 40 with a wetsuit. That was my plan. I ended up going 40-40 without the wetsuit. So for me, that was a big win. I think I averaged 158-ish, 159 for the swim per 100. Again, which is in a race I was really happy with, because there were a handful of times I had to stop and kind of, poke my head up and see where I was and see where other people were. I got my first real good kick in the face ever in the race yesterday. It was coming around the final marker, that final buoy, where it started to get pretty congested, and I went to go take a stroke, and I got kicked pretty hard right here. It hurt pretty good, and the guy knocked my goggles up, and I may have yelled an expletive at him, and I kind of had to just tread water and fix my goggles, get the water out of it, kind of shake my head a little bit, and then I finished the 100 meters to the finish. Tips for the swim: number 1. Have something that can calm you down in the water. If it's meditation, if it's a breathing exercise, if it's slowing your cadence down, if it's a song to sing in your head to calm you down, practice that. Practice that before race day. Practice your calming techniques prior to race day. Because on race day, you want to be able to have it ready to go at your disposal. I have songs that I sing. I have breathing. I have slowing my stroke down. I have all kinds of stuff that I use, and I'll just pull from any of them on race day. Number one. Number two, be comfortable swimming with a lot of other people. At some of the turns, my torso was completely out of water, and I was kind of swimming. There's this big Tarzan swim. You're looking around and you're fighting and you're grabbing. You have to prepare for that. So be comfortable swimming with other people. If you can only get in the pool, most times, put a couple people in the lane with you. Take off at the same time. Get used to kicking, grabbing, punching, all kinds of stuff. 3, if you need to do a 1.5 miles in open water, I strongly suggest that you can do close to twice that in the pool. That will be a big confidence boost. 4, I'm up to 4. Be able to do the distance without a wetsuit. Okay, do not rely on that wetsuit. And you may say, okay, well, I don't care about getting awards. It's not about that. It's about how you feel. You do not want to overheat. You don't want to get too hot. So be prepared. You never know what's going to happen on race day. It could be optional. It could be, wetsuit illegal. Be prepared to do that. 5, I will say for the swim, figure out how long you need to eat prior to swim start. Yesterday I had a peanut butter and jelly at 3:30 in the morning. I woke up at 3:30. The swim start was 6:30. So that gave me 3 hours to digest that whole sandwich. I also had my whole bottle of LMNT, which I use 1,000 milligrams of electrolytes, 1,000 milligrams of sodium. So that's usually my breakfast on race day. But it gave me 3 hours to digest it. So figure out all that stuff before the swim. I'll say the last thing I want to say about the swim is the swim is the shortest part of the race. So you're not going to be in there too long relative to the rest of the day. Do whatever you have to do to remind yourself that it's fun. Try to keep that smile on your face, even when you're swimming, right? Just try to stay positive and optimistic and just, remind yourself that this is a big day. It's happy, right? You do not have to, doesn't have to be super stressful. Just try and be mindful of that. But yeah, got out of the water, 40-40, all good. Let's talk about the bike yesterday. Let's put I'll just get it out there. I do not like going fast on a bike. I don't. I get to 20 miles an hour, or I get to 23, 24 miles an hour. I'm like, all right, I'm good. Especially on a TT bike, on a time trial bike. I feel maybe I don't have enough experience with it. Maybe it's my bike. Maybe it's just the fear of wiping out at 24 miles an hour and having to take care of the kids all week. It could be a lot of things. But I am not comfortable going that fast on a bike. With that said, I took off out of transition 1. I looked down a couple times. I was averaging 20 miles an hour, which for me is higher than my goal. My goal was to hold 18 for the whole day. I thought that was a good speed for me. I was planning on 3 hours and change for the bike. So started off on the bike, felt great. It was on the Atlantic City Expressway, which I thought was going to be a little nerve-wracking, considering you have cars going 70 miles an hour about 15 feet from you. That was a little nerve-wracking. They do a fantastic job of keeping the course safe. The entire right lane is shut down. Then they have cones for the entire length in the expressway. So I got there, I saw that, I felt better. Was holding 20 miles an hour up until the rain. Let's talk about the rain. So how the AC course works, you go out the expressway to exit 5, and then you get off and you go around this nice loop through, all the back country roads, and then back on the expressway, back in Atlantic City, you go back up, off exit 5 to the expressway, take this big loop, back on the expressway, do that twice, you're done. No, three times to get to 56 miles. On the second loop in the neighborhood, in the back country roads, I saw lightning. A lot of it, and it got real dark real quick. It was like it went from morning to nighttime really, really quickly. I'll have a map image I'll pull up here too. Saw the lightning, started hearing thunder, and first thought was, oh my God, I trained a half a year for this race, and it's gonna get canceled. It's gonna get canceled in the middle of this because of thunder and lightning. Well, it did not get canceled. And about 10 minutes later, the skies opened up to like I haven't seen in a long, long time. Long time. If I was driving in a car, I would have said, man, this rain is crazy. I can't believe we're driving in this. Well, we were in a car. We were on metal bikes. And now we're like 20 plus miles away from transition at this point. We're way out there. And the rain starts. I didn't have glasses because my sunglasses got broke in T1. So I must have stepped on them, so they were shattered. So I had no glasses. So now the rain's coming. And then the wind picks up. And these winds, I'm telling you, they had to be at least 20 miles an hour. Crosswinds blowing everywhere. The back of my bike's fishtailing all over the place. I'm feeling all uneasy on the bike. So now I've gone from 20 miles an hour to like 15. And even that felt a little fast. And the rain just didn't stop. It's hit me in the face. So I see an overpass a little further up. And I was like, you know what? I'm not out here trying to be a champion today. So I pull over onto the underpass. I'm sorry, the overpass. And now a couple of the people pull up behind me. And now we're talking. We're like, man, I can't believe this rain. It's just horrible, torrential downpour. I mean, thunderstorm, lightning, the whole deal. And we're way far away. So we're talking. Now I realize that, time is still ticking. So my race time is still going. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm not trying to wipe out here and get hurt. So me and the small group of people, we waited for about 10 minutes and then said, all right, well, we thought it started to slow down a little bit, slow down relative to what it was. So then we went back out. We took off. And it continued to rain. And it rained. And it rained. And then we come back onto the ramp to get back onto the NXC Expressway. And it's pouring and it's raining. So now you're on the expressway. You're in aero position. You're in this horrific thunderstorm. Greyhound buses are flying by, at 60 miles an hour. They're kicking up, water. Bikes are kicking up water. It was a hot mess. I probably shouldn't use the term hot mess because the only saving grace was instead of this race being brutally hot, like to the point of dehydration and danger, the rain actually cooled it off a lot. And I did not need nearly as much, fluid and liquid as I thought, or so I thought. I wasn't hot. There was one point when I came out on the underpass, I was actually cold from all the rain, which I never in a million years thought I was going to be cold yesterday. So that was wild. So with that little rain delay that I gave myself, and with all that rain, I ended up averaging 18.4, I believe, for the day. Which, again, considering that it was in a thunderstorm, I'm very happy with 18.4. Tips for the bike. Be prepared to ride with a group. I feel like it's the same thing I was just saying for swim. Yesterday was my first time I felt like I rode in a real, peloton, right? A real group of riders. And there were a lot of people at one point. And these people, I guess, do not adhere to the drafting rules. So there were times where people would pass on the left and get right back in front of me. I mean, my front wheel was almost touching their back wheel. And when you're going 17, 18 miles an hour in a thunderstorm with a bike that close to you, with cars on your left, like it's nerve wracking. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I wish I would have done more group rides to practice that, to prepare for that, because that was much like it was much like racing in open water for the first time for me, where I was like, oh my god, what's happening? There's too many people. So you're wondering, you're just worried somebody's gonna wipe out, and I'm gonna wipe out. So that's definitely the first thing I would say is practicing more group rides. 2, spend more time training on your bike than on your swim and your run. Unless you're new to those things, but I feel like that should be obvious. The bike's the longest portion. I ended up, for the day, I think my bike time was right around 3 hours. I'll have to double check that. I'll pop that up too, but it was around 3 something. So I was happy with that. I wanted to go 3 hours. It was close. That was that. Also, for the bike, practice getting your nutrition from the bike. That definitely took some time where I was futzing around with pulling nutrition out of my bike bag, pulling it out of the back of my zoot, out of my tri-suit. It should be muscle memory. You should be able to grab it, eat it, drink it, put it right back. Futzing around. You don't want to be looking down for your bike, your bottle cage. You don't want to be doing any of that. So practice all of the moves. I know it may sound silly, but definitely practice how to access your nutrition. At one point, I couldn't get a pack of Cliff Blocks open, and I was trying to futz around with that, with my teeth ripping it off. That didn't work. Little things like that. Definitely practice that. Know how to change a tire or a tube for a flat. I saw lots of flats on the course yesterday. Tons of flat tires. I would to be able to do that, be able to do it under pressure, under stress. The last thing I'll say for the bike is go get your bike fitted. Actually, there's one more thing I want to say about the bike. Go get your bike fitted. It'll make a huge difference in comfort, and you don't want to be out there that long and a bike doesn't fit. So find a bike shop, go get a fitting. You'll thank yourself later. The last thing I'll say for the bike is, and I know this should be obvious, and I'm guilty of it, don't make any changes to your bike the week of. Even if you think they're good, positive changes, don't do it. My cleats on the bottom of my shoes were worn pretty bad, and I was having trouble getting unclipped because they were just old and getting stuck. So I bought new cleats the week of, thinking that would help, and it did, but there was a problem with them. I won't go into it here, but it resulted in me having to buy new cleats from Ironman Village the day before the race, and reassembling them, and putting those cleats back together the day before the race. Not a good idea. About 10 minutes into the bike yesterday, I started to develop really bad right knee pain below my knee, which I've never had ever. And I think, if I had to guess, it has to do something with the cleats and the way that they were positioned on there. I may have had my foot too far forward or back or angled differently, and maybe I was using a different part of my knee that I normally don't use. So whatever you need to do for your bike, swim and run too, have it worked out at least a week in advance, and then don't touch anything. All right, I think that's everything for the bike yesterday. I will say the bike was pretty fun, even though it was a little hairy and a little scary at times. Overall, it was pretty cool just to be out there in that misery with a bunch of other athletes, and it was a great adventure. It was a good adventure. Next, okay, let's talk about the run. The run in Atlantic City on the boardwalk, I was told, they call it Satan's Boardwalk or Satan's whatever. They said it's unbearably hot. There's no shade anywhere, not for a second on this course. Half marathon, 13 miles, 13.1 miles. You run all the way down to Ventnor, past the pier, all the way back up past the Ocean Casino, which is almost at the end of the boardwalk, and then back. And I'll tell you what, you feel like this boardwalk never, ever ends. And this was one thing going into this race that all of the people that told me this were right about. You just feel like you're running into like an endless just sea of people. Yesterday's run was interesting because the rain cooled it off a little bit, and so now we had cloud cover. But at the start of the race, there was no cloud cover, and it was hot. Cloud cover picked up a couple miles in, so that helped. The aid stations on this race are fantastic. They have oranges, pretzels, all kinds of bars, Morton gels, Red Bull, Coke. I'm not sure if it was flat Coke or carbonated. I don't know, but they definitely had cola, water, Gatorade, ice. You name it, they had it. For the ice, they would say, "Hey, do you want ice?" And you say, "Yeah," and they would pull your suit out from your neck and dump it down your back, which was really cool. There's aid stations, I would say, approximately every mile, maybe mile and a half. Hit every one of them. Hit every single aid station if you feel like you have to. I think you should. The other thing I think is a big help is all the showers that they have. Showers. It's just like these towers that just shoot out. I don't mean like a formal shower, like a beach, get the sand off you type thing. Stopping in that for a second, let the cold water hit you, fill up, get that all nice and wet, and it cools you off a lot. So definitely do that. That was a huge help yesterday. I would suggest to try and keep your feet away from those things though, because, yesterday it didn't matter. On the bike, I had it felt like an inch of rain, an inch of water in my shoes. So much where every pedal stroke, you could hear that. I won't do it in the video, but that like squishy, walking in a swamp feel and sound. That was the whole thing on the bike. So if you can keep your feet as dry as possible, do that. Take the ice, take the water. If you can keep your feet away from it, I would suggest that. But definitely hit every aid station along the way. My race yesterday for me, in terms of fitness and endurance and strength and stamina, I felt significantly better than I thought I was going to up until mile 9. And it turned real quick. Mile 8 of the run, I was slow. I was probably averaging 10:30, 10:25 a mile at that point, which is right where I wanted to be. I wanted to be at 10:30. I wanted to hold that. That was my goal for the day. I ended up averaging 11 because at mile 9, almost like that, my body said, "That's enough. You've been out here long enough." And I absolutely hit a wall at mile 9. My legs felt like bricks. They felt heavy, tight, cramped. They were starting to hurt. And then I had, and then my stomach, and then I started to feel nauseous, which was the first time ever in a race or training that I've had that. And I didn't know what it was. And I think that was my biggest problem with the overall race yesterday, is not being able to identify a problem. So I was unsure. I said, okay, well, am I feeling nauseous because I'm not hydrated enough? I was like, well, so I was drinking water. I'm like, did I drink too much water? Am I short on electrolytes? Well, maybe I should have some pretzels. So I had some pretzels, and then my stomach was like, nah, you don't want to eat that. And I ended up spitting it out in a trash can. So I wasn't sure if it was too much or too little of electrolytes, fluid, or calories and carbs. I didn't know. And I got nervous to experiment with that. I was doing a gel every 25-ish minutes, 20 minutes. I like the SIS gels for the run. I like the Morton gels for the bike, but I do like the SIS gels for the run. I've been training with them for months, so I knew they worked. So my game time decision was, okay, from mile 9 to the finish, which was 4 miles, to just sip water. It worked. I got across the finish line, but I think the takeaway here is try and understand what your body, try to understand what your body's response is and how to repair it. I had a meticulous plan, which I'll pull up here as well, nutrition plan going into this. I knew what I was going to take every hour on the bike, what I was going to do, but I didn't really do it that detailed for the run. I knew I was going to have about a bottle, in every hour and a half, walk the aid stations if I had to, take some water, take the gels, but that was about it. I didn't know what else I could really do to plan out nutrition. I felt like it was good enough. And maybe it was. Maybe after being out there for 6 hours with no solid food, just gels and sugar water, basically, maybe my stomach was just said, you know what, man, like, you got all this stuff sloshing around in your body. Maybe that's just what happens. I don't know. I'd have to talk to more people about that. Maybe at that point you can't put, your glycogen reserves are so low and so shot, maybe you can't replenish it as fast as you need to. I don't know. Maybe it's that gigantic mouthful of Atlantic City Bay water that I swallowed during the swim. That happened. Maybe it was that. I don't know. But I would definitely say on the run to stay as hydrated as possible. Sunscreen. I forgot to put sunscreen on. So my face is probably a little red. I would say there's also no shame in walking. I walked almost every aid station. I luckily didn't have to walk for recovery, but I did walk most of the aid stations. It does not matter. If you have to slow down, do it. If you have to stop, do it. I saw lots of people stopping to stretch along the way. Tons of people were out doing that. The Atlantic City run is a blast from a scenery perspective. You're running through the boardwalk and all the casinos are open and people are out cheering you on and partying, and it's a really cool vibe. It's a really great atmosphere. There's no shortage of exciting scenery. You can use your imagination what I'm talking about, but it was pretty interesting, a pretty lively race. So miles 9 to 14 or 9 to 13 were not that great. You're digging in deep. You're in the pain. You're in the pain cave, pretty deep at that point. But the race director, Stephen Del Monte, said in the athlete guide, or said in the meetings, you're gonna hit the wall. You just got to push through it. Everybody will hit the wall, push through it. There's a great feeling on the other side, and he was right. So I did. Still wasn't great, but I was able to cross the finish line with a smile on my face. 6:25:11, I think, was my official time. I wanted to go sub 6. That was my goal, to go sub 6. If I didn't stop on the bike for that rain delay, it was about 10 minutes. Now I'm at 6:15. Maybe I could have picked up some time on the bike if I wasn't going so slow because of the rain. If I would have figured out nutrition a bit better, maybe on the run, I could have picked up some time there. But I'm still happy with 6:25 for my first one. I was able to cross the finish line with a big smile on my face. And my buddy told me that you only get to do your first one time, right? So soak it in, really kind of just try to look around. I try to be very mindful all day yesterday. Like, dude, you are in an Ironman race, half Ironman race. You are doing this. You worked hard for this. Like, really appreciate this and really kind of enjoy it. So running out to the pier, the Ventnor Pier, you run all the way out, all the way back, and you're way past the breakers on this pier. You're looking out at the ocean, and you're on top of the water. It was beautiful. Even in the chaos of the bike, you say, this is an adventure. You worked hard for this. Enjoy it. So across the finish line, they had an athlete tent for free food, free drinks, all kinds of stuff. I didn't partake in any of it, which is odd for me because post race is probably one of my favorite parts of this whole thing, is just being in that community and being around everybody else. My stomach felt like trash. I I kept walking, which you would think is crazy. After that race, you just want to collapse. I ended up walking 35 minutes back to transition. There were all kinds of shuttle buses. I was not about to get in a shuttle bus, not feeling good. My stomach was whacked, which sucks because they had free beer and food and all kinds of stuff. But I walked back all the way, mile or whatever it was, mile and a half back to transition, and I had one little mini can of Coke. I haven't had caffeine in years, and I had that little can of Coke, and it did work. It settled my stomach. I laid down for a while back in camp, and in about, I don't know, probably 2 to 3 hours it took for my stomach and my body to kind of come around again. And then drove home, I probably felt like the best shower of my life, and then ordered a gigantic burger and fries and pizza, like a real slob. And that was the best burger I've ever had in my life. But I'll be honest, I felt like complete trash all night. I feel like it almost felt like you had the flu. And then I was thinking about it, like, if you spent 7 hours at the shore in the heat without sunscreen, you would feel pretty crappy. If you spent 3 hours on the bike in a thunderstorm soaking wet, you'd probably feel pretty crappy. You run a half marathon, you're probably going to feel pretty crappy. Well, if you take all three of those things and lump them together and then pack up an RV full of weekend camping stuff, you're going to feel pretty crappy. So my legs hurt pretty bad. I've slept like a rock and woke up this morning feeling a lot better. I don't feel like, feverish like I had the flu like I did last night, but I'm definitely tired, and I definitely need some recovery time from this. So what are the takeaways? One, if you are interested in triathlon, or you're a triathlete, and you're thinking about doing your first 70.3, do it. 100% find a race and do it. It's a once in a lifetime experience doing this for the first time. Getting to Ironman Village and seeing all the stuff and all the flags and just all the people and all the smiles and just the energy is like palpable. You can like feel all the positive energy in this environment, in the community. There's nothing like it. Walking into transition on race day morning, oh my God, I'm getting the chills even just thinking about it now. It's dark, everybody's there, you're setting yourself up. It's incredible. It's incredible. Seeing the sunrise come up over the swim. I'll post a picture here. I didn't take it. I'll give credit to where I got it from. It was on a Facebook group. I'll put it here. Seeing this at the beginning of a race is just like breathtaking. It's beautiful. It's great. Getting to that finish line, the red carpet that you run down and that finisher chute, you see you see everybody that you don't even know. All these people are all cheering for you and high-fiving you. Everything goes in like slow motion. Seeing my fiance at that finish line and, running over and giving her a kiss at that finish line, I'll never forget that. That's core memory stuff right there. It's her, she was there. My dad was there. Just incredible. Like, getting emotional even just thinking about it. It's pretty special, It's like the end of like this really long journey, and like, and you look around and you say, and you think about it, like every person at that course has a story, which is fascinating to me, right? Everybody's running the race for their own reasons. Running to something or running away from something. And it's really just special. It's like magical to be in the middle of that, right? So definitely do a 70.3. I wish I could say it was going to be Atlantic City, but unfortunately that race is no longer. 1. 2. Delmo, Steven, the race director. I could spend an hour talking about this dude. He is the best race director that I've ever seen. He cares so much about this community and triathlon and positivity and community. If you are thinking about doing your first try and you are on the East Coast, the New Jersey area, or not, New York, Maryland, wherever, Delaware, if you want to come and do the absolute best triathlon, I think it's the Delmo Sports Try the Wildwoods. Come do that race. Come do a Delmo Sports race. It'll be the best time you ever had. He is such a great dude, and I just hope and wish for nothing but success for him and his team for putting on such an incredible race yesterday. Third, and this will be last. If you're thinking about doing a triathlon and you think it's impossible, I promise you that it's not. And you don't know me. You're like, well, what's your promise? I promise you, it's not only doable, but I read yesterday, you don't know your limit until you push yourself to it. So if you don't know how to swim, learn how to swim. You don't like biking because it hurts your butt, get out there and bike until it doesn't hurt anymore. You don't like to run slow. But triathlon will absolutely change you. It'll change so much of your life for the better. I cannot encourage it enough. I cannot suggest to get in the triathlon. It's just the community, the discipline, the happiness, the joy, the fitness, the mindset. There's nothing like it. Nothing like it. And then that'll be it. That'll be it. So I hope to see some of you, all of you, none of you, whatever. I hope to see at least some of you at a race someday. If you happen to be at a race that I'm at, come say hello and let's talk about this stuff. Absolute A+ of a race yesterday. Ironman 70.3, Atlantic City, and that's it. Have a good day, everybody.